Okay, welcome to part 3 of our chapter 12, installing Windows. In this video, we're going to cover using our NetLabs lab environment, our virtual environment. So what you need to do is go to netlab04.tccd.edu, right? So netlab04.tccd.edu. I'll put a little Word document posted with this video to help you walk through the steps of getting on here. And you'll have your username and password to get into the environment. You'll log in. And then you'll want to do a new lab reservation. I'm still trying to figure this out, but you should be able to schedule a lab for yourself. And then you should see the available classes. You should just see the one available class. You'll click on it. It probably is under the general though. And then under general, you'll see the ITSC 1305 for me, for Spicer. Select that one. We're going to be doing the workstation lab first. Eventually we'll do the Active Directory lab later in the semester. But for now we'll do the workstation lab. You'll check it out. So if you're going to do it right then, you just click on the time slot. It gives it to you for about an hour. So just go ahead and choose however long time you think you need. You probably only need about an hour for this lab. And then, but you could go ahead and do 2 hours or 3 hours. It really won't matter. Because you can return the time when you're done. So we'll go ahead and submit, and we've got the reservation. So now we've got a reservation, and then you can enter into the lab. All right, so here we are into the lab. You've got some options where you can send the Control-Alt-Delete to the machine. You can power it on and off. You can scale the display. You can undock this, and move it, and then you can also take screenshots, which you'll need to do to submit your work. But you can also use the snipping tool to take screenshots. But there's ways that you take the screenshot and then submit that with your documentation for the labs. So, all right. So on this machine, right? So our password is password. So here we have Windows 10, but the beauty of this machine is we have VMware installed. So we go ahead and launch our VMware. And this is our VMware. For the most part, once you start building machines, they'll be over here on the left, and you'll be able to launch them. Here we create a new virtual machine. If you had an existing virtual machine, you could open one, and then you could connect to a remote server if we had a server environment. But for now, we're just going to create a new virtual machine. We're just going to do the typical. Later we'll go into some customization for installation, but for right now, just typical. We want to choose a disk image, right? Our ISO that we talked about in the other video. So we're going to select our ISO. and then we're going to browse for our ISOs. It's located in our B drive, an ISOs folder, and so we have a Linux ISO and a Windows ISO. So we'll installing Windows 10 in this video. So we'll select the Windows 10. So basically, this is like installing a DVD that has the Windows installation files, right? That's what we're doing. And so we'll say next. This is where you name the file. So this is video VM, right? That way it won't get confused, because some of you may get this machine in the net labs, and I don't want you to confuse it with your machines. So this is the video VM. The disk size, right? So the default is more than fine. Splitting the disk into multiple files is fine. It just makes it easier to manage, to split it into multiple files. But actually, a single file makes it a lot easier to manage, but it gets big, right? So having a 60 gig file or whatever in the end, it's a very large file. So splitting it up does make it a little easier for that aspect. Here we can customize our hardware, which we will do a little bit, but if you click on customize hardware, we could add and give it more memory, right? Apparently the maximum we can give is 8 gigs, but 2 gigs is more than enough. Our processors, we could add more processors or more cores. We could turn on virtualization, which we actually do want to do, because we want to install Hyper-V eventually on this machine, which is another virtualization software like VMware, but it's Microsoft's built in. So we're going to turn on our virtualization. This is like turning on the virtualization in the UEFI. Because like I mentioned before, on most systems that have virtualization, these are disabled by default. And even here in VMware, they're disabled by default. Because you do get a performance hit by doing this. But it is still much more convenient to be able to do virtualization. We could change what is in our CD or DVD drive, right? But right now we need the ISO, so we need that. We need it connected on at power. The network card, there are different network settings. We may go into this a little bit more, but just suffice to say, we have a network card. It's set to get an IP address, but we could add another one, right? So we could add a DVD drive, a floppy drive, a network adapter, USB controller, sound cards, parallel ports, right? Printers. We can do all kinds of hardware that we can add to this. So for right now, we're okay. So we're going to close this and say finish. And it's set to power on after it gets created, but right now it's creating our disk. And then once it creates the disk, it'll start up the machine, and then once it starts up, we'll select the CD DVD drive to install the operating system. So like I say, right now it's creating the 60 gig disk for us, and setting up everything for the VM, for the virtual machine. So creating a machine so that then we can then install the operating system on the machine. It does take some time, and especially in a virtualized environment. especially since this machine is already a virtual machine that we're going to be creating virtual machines on the virtual machine. So we're already very uh, um, extrapolated, and utilizing our resources. Um, but it's good for a lab. Uh, you wouldn't want to run anything that needed real production usage. You wouldn't want to run anything in this scenario where you've got a VM within a VM. Uh, it's only good for lab use. Okay, so now here's our VM. It's starting to power on. It's virtually, or do you want to continue? Right, so running VMware in a virtual machine will result in degradation performance. Do you want to continue? And yes, we do. We do realize this. Inconsistent with current state. Okay. Okay, so we had an error here. So let's close our VM and then let's try this again. Now you see that our VM is over here, operation inconsistent with current state. Well, that did not take. All right. Let's try to do this one more time. So we're running into some issues here. Creating the disk again. For the second machine, we'll see if this one works any better. Okay. Click into the machine and we'll hit our space bar and we're booting in. So okay, so we're doing better. So I clicked into the black screen so that I actually could take control of the machine, and then I hit the space bar because it said to hit any key to boot from the DVD, which is what we wanted. So now we're booting from the Windows installation disk. and you'll notice I've lost control of my mouse. One thing you can do the Control Alt and you get your mouse back. That's one thing, is when you're controlling the VM, you lose control of your mouse from your machine. It goes and gets locked in. Alright, so we definitely want English. We want our keyboard to be the US, so we're going to click next on this, and we're going to go and install. We could repair our computer. There's options here because we booted from the installation CD, and we'll go over that later in the semester, but right now we're going to install. And then it's going to get our files ready. One of the things is through this, right, so it's asking for our product key, right, to activate Windows. Right now I'm going to leave this blank, and we'll use the product key later in another lab to activate our Windows. So right now I'm just going to leave it blank and say I don't have a product key. And then we're going to do Windows 10 Education. Well, you know what? Let's do Windows 10 Pro, and we'll select next. We're going to agree to our licensing. Click next. And here's where you would, if you're doing an upgrade, you would select the upgrade, but we're not upgrading. We have a custom install because the hard disk is blank right now. So we're going to do a custom install. Here is our hard drive, right? We have 60 gigs of unallocated space, right? So we could do a new partition, or format this. Or we can just hit next and say yes, you used all of the disk space, which is what we want to do. Let's see. Here, if you do new, right, you could specify the size, right? So if you were going to do a multi-boot option or something like that, you could specify. Let's see, 6144. So we can do 3, right? And split it in half, but we'll just do this. We'll cancel that. We're gonna select all the space for Windows. We could also load drivers if we needed to at this point. Alright, so we're going to copy our files and then get everything ready, and then start installing. And then it's going to ask us some finishing up questions. Later in the semester, one of the projects that we have is where you will create what's called an unintended install, and you will already have answers to all the questions predefined, so that when you start up the VM with the DVD, it will load everything. It won't ask you any questions, and it will also install several applications. It'll just be, you just start up the machine, put the DVD in, you hit the space bar or any key, and it then loads Windows without asking any questions. It loads some applications without asking any questions. So it's called an unintended install, and saves a lot of time for technicians, and that, if you can put a DVD in or a USB, boot up the machine, and then go to the next machine, so you could do many machines at once using the unintended install. Whereas, if you do it this way, you kind of monitor it, have to answer the questions as they come. It's a much slower process. Okay, we're back. It's finally rebooting. And we'll get going here. Didn't think you'd want to watch it just tick away for about 5 minutes. So now Windows is installed, but now we've got some questions, finishing up questions that it will ask us. Once again, this is running slow because we're running a virtual machine within a virtual machine. Going through the Windows boot process, right? It loaded the device drivers. Now it's starting all the services that are required for Windows. Now it's getting our devices ready. And eventually it'll start asking us some questions. I do apologize. On our classroom machines, this goes way faster, but we need to use the NetLabs That's what we have. Of course, you can install VMware if your home computer has enough RAM to run multiple machines. You could install VMware. There's a link in the announcement section on where to go to get and download VMware for free. So you may want to do the labs, most of the labs from home on your home computer, because it'll go a lot faster. But we are at least fortunate to be able to do the labs here using the NetLab environment. But it is a little slow. I will admit that, and we'll see how things go. But at least it does look like it's going to be doable, but it may take a lot of time and patience on our part. Alright, I'm going to pause the video here, and when it does finally come back, I will start the recording again. Alright, it finally, after a reboot again and many minutes of churning, it finally came up and started asking us questions, right? So we are in the United States region, so we're going to go ahead and say yes to this. We do want the US keyboard layout. We don't need to add a second keyboard layout. This is usually for those that use different languages, things like that. But in our lab, we just stick with the US. Okay, and we don't have internet connectivity in NetLab, so we're going to select I don't have internet. But in this, if you were in a normal environment, you could then select your wireless network or configure your wired network connection. All right, so this is more just when you connect to the internet. Yeah, well, we can't connect to the internet, so we can continue with the limited setup. Alright, who's this PC? Alright, we're just going to put student. Alright, do next. password, next, password, next, password, password, security questions, password, let's say password, pet name, the city I was born in, password, and the name where our parents met, it was password, so now then do more with active history. Yeah, no, we don't need that. We decline the digital assistant. And of course, if you were installing this for your own use, if you wanted that, you could, or whatever your company is. For the lab, I'm just turning all this off. These are just helpful features, but they're not needed in our lab. And we'll scroll all the way down. Alright, and then we accept that we want them off. And finally, we're getting everything ready, and it's loading Windows for the first time. And of course, do not turn off your PC because it's doing some very important configurations right now, one-time configurations. Based off your answers, which is why if we create an answer file to answer those questions, you wouldn't have to do the questions, and it would do this automatically for you. And we'll, like I said, we'll do that in one of our projects of creating an answer file, so you don't have to answer those questions. And it just installs Windows for you using your questions, your answers to the questions. So when you do your lab, I will provide you a document that will tell you what you should name your virtual machines, because I named this one Video VM2 because Video VM got corrupt. But you'll have a name that you'll name your VMs, because we'll use them throughout the semester for various things, and I may reference them by name. And you'll need to have them in the certain configurations to be able to proceed to do things. So it's important that you name them correctly and keep them organized. But as long as you keep track of them, it's fine. You know, you can name them whatever you want. But I do want your passwords to be password. Just keep it simple, just all lowercase. That's your password to get in here. That'll be your password on your VMs. Because if you forget your password, there's not much I can do for you. You'll have to start over and recreate your machines, because I don't have access to these NetLab machines like I would a real machine. Okay, so looks like finally we're installed. We have the VM virtual machine within the virtual machine. So just some housekeeping, right? So I unpin a lot of this stuff from the taskbar. I don't use Edge because I mean, we really can't use a lot of documents. But one of the things I do like to do is put in the desktop icons. I'm just so used to having them there, but you'll find that they'll be useful as well, so you probably want to put them on there, at least some of them. They're located, so if you right click on the desktop and go to personalize, right, this menu comes up, and then you select themes. Then under themes, if you scroll down, there's the related settings and desktop icon settings, and you just turn on these icons. And so the recycle bin is already there, but we're adding this PC, my documents, user files, and then the network. Although it's not going to be very helpful with this one because we have no network. But that's all right. Say OK. We'll sort by type, right? And this will become useful because there's, especially this PC, right? If you right-click on it, there's a Manage button and a Properties button, or options, and be able to map drives, things like that. It makes it very easy to access things, so I do like them on the screen. But so we have it installed. Everything is set. If this were a real machine, we would do our updates now, but we're not connected to the internet. We can't do updates. So what we will do, though, is we want to go ahead and power and shut down this guest, right? Power off. You can do power off, or you can do shut down guest. Either one works. Do not show this message again. If you don't want to see that message again, check that. And so now we're off, right? What I am going to do is right click on my video VM and open up the virtual directory. So here's my VM folder. So virtual machines are just files on your computer. And that's how you can manage them and do things. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete the video VM and its files just to save space on this machine, and then I'm going to remove the video VM, and then we'll just leave the video VM too. Alright, and so that is installing a virtual machine and basically installing Windows 10. There's not a whole lot to it, but it does take a little time in our NetLab environment. I'll see you in the next video. We'll go over some more items. We'll definitely be doing a dual boot. We'll do a Linux install, but we'll also go over some more of the Chapter 12 information as well. So I will see you in the next video. One more thing. So actually now we're here still in the Net Labs, and I still have an hour and 33 minutes remaining out of my 2 hours or whatever. So what I do need to do is go ahead and power off my workstation, and then we can end my reservation and free it up and allow someone else to use this machine. But these should be checked out to you. You'll have your own pod, so you won't have to worry about it. But yeah, go ahead and end your reservation, and then check it back in, and then now we have no more reservations. And so that's the last bit of finishing that lab. And so then now I truly will see you in the next video.